Welcome back to Shadow Whispers Labs. Dim the lights, lock your doors, because some stories were never meant to be told. This is one of them. A few years after my parents retired, we moved far away from the city, into a heavily wooded area in northern Montana. The house was huge, isolated, no nearby neighbors, no streetlights, just endless trees surrounding the property. At first, it felt amazing. My parents loved the quiet. I loved having so much space. One weekend, while my parents were out for dinner, my girlfriend came over to watch a movie in the basement. Everything felt normal at first, but halfway through the movie, I got this terrible feeling that someone was outside. Not just a random feeling. It felt like I was being watched. I kept glancing toward the dark windows behind us. After the movie ended, I walked my girlfriend to her car and watched her drive away. When I went back downstairs to turn off the lights, I noticed movement outside the basement window. A man was standing there. He looked filthy, long tangled hair, thin face, dirty clothes, and he was smiling. Not a normal smile. It was wide and unnatural, like he was enjoying scaring me. In his hand was a knife. He slowly tapped the blade against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. I backed away without taking my eyes off him. When I moved into the next room, the man calmly walked outside along the house until he appeared at the sliding glass door, still smiling, still staring directly at me. I rushed upstairs just as my parents came home. My dad grabbed his rifle and searched outside. My mom called the sheriff. Apparently, there had been reports of a strange man wandering through nearby properties. The police found nothing that night. But after that, strange things kept happening. Late at night, I'd hear faint tapping sounds outside my bedroom. Sometimes scratching. Sometimes footsteps around the deck. It went on for weeks. Then winter arrived. One snowy night, while my parents were away, our Rottweiler suddenly started growling at the front door. He never growled unless something was actually there. Then came a slow knock, 3 heavy thuds. I stayed completely silent. The next morning, I stepped outside and saw footprints circling the entire house. Whoever made them had stopped at every single window. It looked like they had been searching for a way inside. That same night, the tapping returned, this time louder. I grabbed the shotgun my dad had left me and stepped onto the upstairs balcony. The backyard floodlights lit up the trees, and there he was again, standing near the forest line, holding the knife, smiling. I pointed the shotgun toward him and yelled for him to leave. He didn't react. He just stared. Finally, I fired a warning shot into the air. The man slowly backed into the woods without ever breaking eye contact. I released the dog. He sprinted into the darkness, barking violently. After that night, I never saw the man again. But even now, years later, whenever I hear branches moving outside at night, I still think about that smile. When I was 13, my parents finally trusted me enough to spend a night alone. We lived in a small town, the kind where nothing bad ever really happened, where neighbors knew each other, where kids rode bikes outside until dark and nobody worried. That weekend, my parents were going out with friends. My older brother was at someone else's house. They left money for food, told me not to stay up too late. Of course, the second they left, I had the whole living room to myself. Hours of gaming, cheap speakers blasting music. I was completely in my own world. Around 8:30, I ordered pizza. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door. The driver was older, late 30s, thick beard, dirty glasses, a dark cap pulled low over his face. I handed him the money. He stared past me, into the house. Then he asked, "You here by yourself tonight?" Something about those words made my skin go cold. I said my dad was upstairs. The man paused, like he was thinking about something. Then he smiled, handed me the pizza, walked away. I locked the door immediately. I brushed it off, went back upstairs. Hours passed. Then, at 11:15 p.m., the doorbell rang again. I thought it was my parents home early. I walked downstairs and said through the door, "Mom?" A man's voice answered. "Hey kid, can you help me for a second?" I froze. He said his car had broken down, said he just needed to use a phone. Something felt wrong immediately. I backed away from the door without saying a word. Then came a hard knock. "Please," he said, "I just need help." That's when I realized he could see me through the glass beside the door. I ran upstairs, grabbed the cordless phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The second my mom heard my voice, everything changed. I told her everything, the pizza driver, the question, and now this man at the door. She told me to lock myself in their bedroom. My dad was already calling the police. I sat on the floor in total darkness, phone pressed to my ear. Then I heard the side gate creak open. Silence. Then footsteps inside the house. I whispered into the phone that someone was downstairs. My mom started screaming for the police to hurry. The footsteps moved through the kitchen, onto the stairs, each step louder than the last. I crawled under the bed. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. The doorknob slowly turned. Once, twice, then came 3 soft knocks. No voice, just knocking. I covered my mouth to stop myself from crying. After a few seconds, the footsteps walked away. I heard officers shouting downstairs. Someone called my name. I unlocked the door. 2 officers were standing in the hallway. The back door was wide open. They searched every inch of that house. They never found him. The next night, my parents took me to identify the delivery driver. The employee matching the description wasn't there. The manager acted nervous the whole time and told us to leave. We never ordered from that place again. To this day, I believe the man outside my house that night was connected to the driver somehow. I don't have proof. I never will. But I still check every lock every single night before I go to sleep.
Spring 2023, college break. 6 of us rented a cheap cabin deep in the woods of Tennessee. 4 guys, 2 girls. A few days of drinking, music, and escaping campus stress. The cabin listing looked great online. In person, it was different. Older, dirtier. The surrounding forest felt unnaturally quiet. The owner gave us one strange warning before we arrived. Don't wander too far into the woods after dark. We laughed it off. The first night went normally. Grilled food, drinks around the fire, stayed up until nearly 2 a.m. I had a small bedroom on the first floor, window facing the woods. Around 4 a.m., I suddenly woke up. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard it. Tapping. Soft tapping against the window. I slowly looked over. A man was standing inches from the glass. His pale face pressed against the window. Messy hair, wide eyes, no shirt. He wasn't blinking. He just stared and lightly tapped the glass with his fingers. I whispered for my friend Jake, sleeping in the living room. The moment he saw the figure, he jumped up and hit the porch light. The man disappeared instantly. The whole group woke up. We searched outside, found nobody. The next morning, we found barefoot footprints surrounding the entire cabin. They had stopped beneath every single window. We should have left right then. Instead, we stayed another night. Nobody really slept. Every sound from the woods made us nervous. Around 3:30 a.m., one of my friends went to the kitchen for water. A second later, he quietly called for us. We walked into the hallway and saw a man standing inside the kitchen. The same man from the window, barefoot, covered in scratches, standing motionless in front of the refrigerator, back toward us. Slowly swaying. Nobody spoke. We just stared. Then someone flipped on the kitchen light. The man was gone. The back door stood completely open. We packed immediately and left before sunrise. Once we got phone service, we called the police. The deputy we spoke to didn't even seem surprised. He said squatters had been reported living deep in those woods for years. But when we mentioned the cabin owner, he went quiet. A few days later, the rental listing disappeared from every website. None of us ever went back. And none of us talk about that trip anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I still remember the sound of fingers tapping softly against the glass.